Gmar Hatima Tova. So far, so good, right? Like, yeah, 1 hour, hour and a half. So Kabbalat Shabbat is my favorite time of the week. I cherish the melodies that we use here and the intimate setting that we create when we daven in our chapel. Additionally, I find great joy in the short study session that we host right before Mariv. Over the last year, our focus has been on Pirkei Avot, a series of rabbinic teachings that deal with the development of our own moral character. Since Yom Kippur is described in the Torah as a Shabbat Shabbaton, I wanted to treat you with a brief taste of what we do on a regular Shabbat, especially because today I am eager to explore with you one of the subjects presented by the rabbis in a later passage of that book. So in chapter 5, the rabbis claim that people's temperaments can be divided into 4 groups. So pay attention. There are those who are easy to anger, but easy to appease. Those who are hard to anger, but hard to appease. Those who are hard to anger and easy to appease. And those who are easy to anger and hard to appease. And now we will get interactive. But, I will need your help. The only rule is today is Yom Kippur, so you can't lie. So, please raise your hand if you are part of group number 1, meaning easy to anger, but easy to appease. Easy to anger, easy to appease. Thank you. Very nice. Please raise your hand if you see yourself in the second group. Hard to anger, hard to appease. Very nice. Group number 3. Who is here hard to anger and easy to appease? I said not to lie. But if you were not lying, you are pure rock stars. Finally, do we have anyone in this room who is easy to anger and hard to appease? Very nice. It's this is a safe space, and what happens in West End stays here at West End. Now, for the record, so that I'm not only asking the question, I consider myself to be part of the second group. I don't get angry easily, but once disappointed, I know that it can be hard for me to rebuild some of the trust that has been broken. I am, with group number 2. Go group number 2. Good job. During Rosh Hashanah, I usually like to talk about the bigger picture. As some of you saw me last week, I spoke about Israel, the US, our communal Jewish life. And I love to think about those big, big themes. On Yom Kippur, actually, I prefer to center my remarks on our own personal journeys and to delve into some of the challenges that each of us is facing one way or another. So today I want us to do our very best in answering a very simple question. That question is, why are we so angry? Simple, right? There are countless examples. You go to the supermarket and somebody is screaming at the top of their lungs because the store is out of a product. You go to the airport and there is a minion of people furious because their flight has been canceled. And then consider how we all react when stuck in rush hour traffic. Between you and me, Some days I believe that God created busy roads just to test our anger management skills. In any case, we are actually not in such a bad shape. Trust me, it could be way worse. I have colleagues all over the country telling me that people are constantly outraged about pretty much everything that is going wrong with their shuls, like non-stop. So first, you know how it is. First is the level of the all-time basic complaint. Then there is the level of the angry complaint. And then there is the level of I won't stop until some heads are rolling on the floor type of angry complaint. You wouldn't believe it. Like mind-blowing. So before I continue, let's stop for a second and please join me in appreciating the fact that none of that crazy stuff happens here at Western Synagogue. Right? All jokes aside, I'm genuinely concerned about the high levels of anger that all of us are exposed to. So today I want to explore with you why we find ourselves frequently annoyed, what triggers our indignation, and how we should respond to these powerful emotions that have the potential of consuming the very best of who we are. Philosophers have been scratching their heads for centuries trying to elucidate the origins of our anger. Now, since this is not a lecture, and I would really like for you to stay awake for as long as you possibly can, this evening I will share with you just two ideas that I have found especially thought-provoking on this matter. So here's the first one. 2,000 years ago, the Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote that the main reason we become extremely upset is because we are excessively hopeful. In what might be seen as an unexpected twist, Seneca teaches that oftentimes behind an individual prone to anger is an overly optimistic human being. The problem is that this optimism is deeply misguided, and it comes as a result of a misguided and mistaken sense of entitlement regarding what the world is presumed to owe us. So in other words, when people are mad because of the rain, it usually stems from their dashed expectations of enjoying of a sunny day instead. Likewise, when someone is furious because their plane is running late, they assume that something like this should never ever happen to them. But you know what? Rainy days and flight delays are far more common than we realize. And every time we ignore these facts, we create a fertile ground for anger to thrive. So for those of us grappling with this form of unrealistic optimism, Seneca recommends adopting a slightly more pessimistic outlook on life. If we could understand that vending machines get stuck every now and then, that our favorite soccer team or the Titans will lose more than enough games during the season, and that car keys will continue to get lost, especially when we are desperately looking for them. If we can understand that those things happen often, then we might be able to diffuse some of our usual sources of rage. Now, in contemporary philosophy, the American thinker Martha Nussbaum connects the anger we experience with our personal insecurities, vulnerabilities, and the perception that someone has diminished our own social status. Anger, then, is the coping mechanism by which we seek to avoid dealing with the profound grief that we experience when facing painful disappointments. These two philosophical insights can actually help us in gaining a deeper understanding of the book of Jonah that we will get to read tomorrow afternoon. If you remember, towards the end of the book, we are told that Jonah is terribly upset. He's angry because the plant that had provided him with shade has withered, and he's frustrated because God had decided to forgive the people of Nineveh. If you don't remember, come back tomorrow. We will read the whole story. The very last chapter. If you think about this, Jonah's first anger is in line with Seneca's teachings. He was so consumed by rage that he failed to grasp the natural cycle of growth and decay. And he was so blinded by his own sense of entitlement that he was unable to accept that such things are commonplace. Jonah's second outburst is aligned with Nussbaum's perspective on anger. He felt betrayed by God. He had gone to a foreign city to declare its destruction, but none of his dire predictions came to pass. Now, he was afraid that people would brand him a liar. His status as a prophet was hurt, and his bitterness was a way to disguise his personal disappointment. That broken relationship with the divine fueled his resentment and contempt. However, instead of dealing with his sense of betrayal, Jonah chose to remain a grumpy man in a foreign land. Not very smart. Now, in addition to these philosophical teachings, as you probably may expect, Judaism also discourages anger. According to the Talmud, a person's true nature is revealed in the way they spend their money, they behave when drinking, and they react when upset. The rabbis go so far as to equate an angry individual with someone engaged in idolatry, and they suggest that when a smart person becomes enraged, they lose all their wisdom, and when a prophet is furious, their prophetic abilities disappear. Expanding upon these ideas, Maimonides claims that anger is an extremely evil tendency, and that we should teach ourselves not to get angry, even in situations that might warrant it. Moreover, all through the high holidays, we beg God to be merciful with us. In the Avinu Malkeinu, we just read, we just pray, Aseh imanu tzedakah v'chesed, God deal charitably and mercifully with us. On Yom Kippur, as we just did and will continue to do, we beat our chests once and again, and we implore God to conquer God's divine anger as we acknowledge our personal flaws and limitations. And as we do all of those things, we are actually challenged by our tradition to answer a very simple question. How can we ask something from God that we are not willing to give ourselves? That is not how things actually work. Now, as I was compiling these insights, I was ready to tell you that our spiritual challenge for the upcoming year had to revolve around the complete elimination of anger from our lives. However, life is always more complicated than that. And after further examination, I now believe that recommending you such a task will be a terrible mistake. If we examine the evolution of anger, particularly here in the United States over the past 100 years, we may find that the pervasiveness of angry people in our times is closely related to the fact that for most of the 20th century, we were encouraged to suppress all our rage and to get rid of it once and for all. In other words, A significant portion of the toxic wrath that we are witnessing nowadays is directly linked to the ongoing call to repress all our anger. Between that and the growth of social media, people are lashing out non-stop against nearly everything that bothers them. But you know what? This type of chaotic rage is not cathartic, is not empowering, and is certainly not moving us to become better agents of change in our aching society. And that is truly a pity, because anger at times can provide us with the fuel that we need to address some of the genuine injustices that we see all around us. Anger can push us to raise our voices in support of those who are suffering the most. But for this energy to be constructive, first we need to engage in a thorough exercise of self-evaluation. Today, all of us are like Jonah, licking our wounds and schlepping our disappointments. However, this Yom Kippur, we are called to do what Jonah couldn't. Today, our challenge is not to eradicate every ounce of anger that we might experience, but rather to discern which type of anger we have to keep, and more importantly, which ones we have to let go. So in order to do that, first I want you to recognize how many of the things that trigger your anger are based on the misguided optimism that Seneca talked about. From traffic jams to waiting in line for customer service, from experiencing slow internet to getting frustrated when people are chewing too loud right next to us. Those things happen. But now, instead of being furious, as Jonah was with his withered plant, we have to realize that things like this happen all the time, and that we can't afford to lose sleep over any of them. This is the kind of rage that we should release as soon as we can. Second, once we did that, I want you to dig deep. I want you to recognize when your anger is in fact a symptom of untreated grief. For most of us, it is easier to complain about the things that bother us than to admit that our hearts have been broken. However, we should know by now that kvetching won't heal the emotional pain that we are carrying within. On the contrary, when left unaddressed, unresolved grief tends to fester, significantly worsening the quality of our lives. The challenge then is to identify those moments in which our anger is masking something else, to set that anger aside, and to effectively deal with the pain that is hiding underneath. It might not be easy, I know, but this is actually the only way for us to heal. So if we can free ourselves from these forms of anger, if we can reach the point where we let go some of our complaints and plenty of our sense of entitlement, then we might be able to finally embrace the rightful indignation that we experience when confronting the substantial injustices that persist in our world. Sexism, racism, anti-Semitism, so many more. As I said before, this rage can fuel our activism and inspire us to fight for what is right, and that is something that we should always aspire to do. And yet, here's the catch, because you know what? Eventually, we will have to learn how to release this third form of anger as well. As author Ursula Le Guin once wrote, anger continued on its past usefulness, becomes unjust, then dangerous. In our tradition, we are called to build a world of chesed, of loving kindness, not of hatred, of anger, of contempt. But that is exactly what we get when we are stuck with any form of anger for too long. A world that is quickly filled with resentment, with vengefulness, with distrust. So let's pause for a minute and ask ourselves one last very important question. Is this the type of world that we truly wish to pass on to those we love the most? Is it? Over the next 20-something hours, I want you to take the time to reflect on what is truly annoying you, to engage in the process of identifying what is at the root of your anger, and to grant yourself the chance to heal. My hope then is that by tomorrow evening, once we finish reading the book of Jonah, and once we are here opening the ark for most of Neila, I hope that if we do the work that needs to be done, by tomorrow evening, we will be ready to stand before God with a sense of renewed strength, with a grateful soul, and with an open heart. May this Yom Kippur be a moving day. May this fast be as meaningful as it can be. And may God bless us all and seal us all in the book of merit and in the book of life. Amen. Mar Chatima Tova and Tzom Kal.